Good evening and welcome back to Capitol Tonight, a statewide look at politics. I'm Tim Boyum. Tonight we're sitting down with House Speaker Tim Moore to talk about the 2015 session, the big stories of the year from the legislature. The Republican from Cleveland County joins us in studio with more. Good to see you, sir. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Good to be with you.
You talked about tax reform a little bit last session. That was an interesting issue all along, especially with Senator Brown trying to do the rural plan to take urban areas. In the end, that didn't happen in that specific way. New revenue is going to be used as well. One of the issues that I find interesting talking with you about is that you in the past have not been a big fan of taxing services. And we are doing that in some sense now on automotive and some of those things. Are you nervous that that's a door opening to potentially taxing more services, or are you more open to that in general than you used to be?
I don't like taxing services, and I think the very modest expansion that was done was a compromise with the Senate in trying to deal with the rural funding issues. So I felt like with the very modest expansion that was done, where you're not creating new tax collectors, where the service that's being taxed has to do with the sale of a good, that was enough of a logical leap that was not going to be problematic. But I certainly we have to remain vigilant to not allow that to creep into other services that are purely of the services sector.
And this is another difference that really crosses party lines. But there is so much discussion about we are a service industry, and it helps us be more stabilized for downturns because we have a broader base. Why is that not a good argument? Well,
there are merits to both sides of the argument. I don't want to do anything that increases the cost to consumers exponentially. It's when it comes to services, for example, whether it's medical bills or funeral bills or legal bills, whatever it is, those things are enough of a burden already. I don't want to see us add a tax to that. So I think we really need to be very cautious about that. I mean, what I'm very pleased with is the tax cuts that we passed this year. We passed significant tax cuts in the form of the corporate income tax and the personal income tax, so that people will be able to keep more of their hard-earned money. And I'm very pleased about that. And at the end of the day, people are going to be paying less taxes in North Carolina now than at any time in recent history.
One of the other social issues, I guess, was the magistrates bill that passed that allows magistrates to recuse themselves. What do you know about how do you think that bill's impacted the state, I guess?
There's not been much discussion about it. I think once all of the politics around it kind of went away, folks saw that it was designed simply as a way to allow the conscience of those who had deeply held beliefs not to have to participate. And a very small number of folks chose to participate in that. A provision was put in place to make sure there are safeguards so that every person is allowed access to a magistrate for those purposes. In the end, I think it got worked out. I think there was probably a lot of bluster on the side of those who were trying to claim that it was trying to deny marriage access. It didn't. I mean, the law was structured carefully. We do that in other areas. I'll give you an example. If you have a judge who, for example, has a deeply held belief against the death penalty, even though the death penalty is the law, that judge is not assigned death penalty cases. So we make those accommodations for judicial officials already all the time. So I think it was a fair compromise. I mean, the Supreme Court ruled the way it ruled about marriage. That issue is done. I mean, it's over with. There's nothing the state can do at this point. And I think we just need to follow through it, administer the law the way the state has to.
We saw the 4 recuse themselves in McDowell County, all 4 of them, and others came in from other counties. I mean, is that to you justification that the policy that's put in place works?
It is. That no one has been able to come back and say they were denied access to a magistrate because it was put in place so that wouldn't happen.
All right. So let's look ahead to 2016 for a minute. Is there anything this session that didn't get done that you want to see get done next year before the end of the 2-year session?
Well, I want to continue to build on the progress we made this last session. The top priority, in my opinion, continues to be job growth and economic development, doing all that we can to make sure that we're bringing new business to this state and keeping existing employers here. We passed legislation this year that expanded what's called the JDIG, which are the tax breaks that are given to try to bring new industries in. My district I represent is on the South Carolina state line, right where Interstate 85 goes into South Carolina. I can drive about 45 minutes south of where I live, and I can see the BMW plant. I can see all the development and the growth that's occurred. I want to see us continue to do all we can so that North Carolina lands a major auto manufacturing facility, because not only that plant but all the surrounding industries. And we need to do all we can to attract small businesses. That is where I want to see us continue our work. We're coming out of the Great Recession of 2008. We're still working our way out. And you mentioned something earlier about on Harry Brown and with the tax issue and how we do taxes. Senator Brown's issue is something that is a real issue in that you have a significant part of North Carolina that has not enjoyed the prosperity and the growth as other parts. That we're sitting in your studio here in Raleigh. I can walk out this front door and see plenty of construction going on in Wake County. I can see that in Durham, Charlotte, a lot of the other urban areas around the state. But the rural areas are not enjoying that same vitality and growth. In fact, some are actually still stuck in the recession. And I think that we need to make sure that the policies that we're enacting benefit the entire state, whether it's transportation funding, education funding, and economic development. Because if we can find ways to bring new industry and new jobs to those rural areas, it takes care of a lot of the other ills that are affecting those areas. You can't have parts of North Carolina that are just absolutely suffering and destitute and have a vibrant entire state. I mean, we're a whole state from Manteo to Murphy, and one can look up in northeastern North Carolina some of the poverty that's there, the communities that are struggling with declining population and losing jobs, and in other rural areas around the state, in the west near where I am. So we're trying to find a way to spread that around. But another thing, other than some sort of populist argument about that, is one of the costs that we've incurred have to do with infrastructure needs in the urban areas. We have areas where the infrastructure is already in place. Pick Hickory, for example, in Catawba County, where there's ample road infrastructure, water infrastructure, sewer, electricity. But because industries have left, those things are going underutilized. I would like to see us continue to find ways to incentivize companies to look at those areas, because not only does it help those communities by bringing jobs to underserved areas, but it saves the state money in having to provide additional infrastructure where there's some already being underutilized.
All right, stick around. We've got to take one last break, but when we come back, more with House Speaker Tim Moore and more about 2016. Stay with us.